Welcome to Guizhou Province, home to the Goupitan Ship Lift, a $7.7 billion mega machine that doesn't just defy gravity, it rewrites the rules of global trade. This isn't just an engineering marvel, it's a strategic chess move, one that reveals how far China is willing to go to secure its economic future, even if it means lifting entire ships over mountains. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, right? A steel leviathan floating hundreds of feet above the earth, slicing through the sky as if gravity doesn't exist. So, why did China build a vertical water highway in the middle of one of its most unforgiving regions? The answer is more shocking and more important than you think. Guizhou isn't just another province in China, it's a geographic nightmare. Jagged limestone cliffs explode from the earth like dragon's teeth, valleys drop hundreds of meters into shadowy canyons, and when monsoon season hits, gentle streams become violent torrents, wiping out roads, bridges, even entire villages. For centuries, this place earned a chilling nickname, the mountain that devours men. And yet, 36 million people live here. Despite its size, Guizhou remained isolated for decades. Roads were slow, dangerous, and constantly at war with nature. Trucks crawled across crumbling highways. River travel was worse. Sharp elevation drops made navigation nearly impossible. Nowhere was this more brutal than on the Wu River, where water levels could shift by nearly 200 meters. That's the height of a 66-story skyscraper. Could canal locks fix it? In theory, yes. But in practice, no chance. You'd need a chain of at least 20 locks, each one the size of a small stadium, just to get through. The time, days, the cost, astronomical, the danger. This bottleneck wasn't just inconvenient, it was economically devastating. Moving a single container from Guizhou to Shanghai took up to 2 weeks and cost 3 times more than similar trips elsewhere in China. Entire industries stalled. Foreign investors stayed away. Millions of people were cut off from opportunity in one of the world's fastest growing economies. And that's when China made a decision: stop trying to beat the mountain and start building through it. What do you build when nature throws a 200-meter vertical wall in your path? If you're China, you build a machine that climbs it. Enter the Goupitan Ship Lift, the tallest, heaviest and most surreal ship elevator on Earth, a towering giant that hauls entire vessels, fully loaded and weighing up to 10,000 tons, straight into the sky. Picture this: a ship the size of a football field floats into a steel chamber the size of a swimming pool. Giant gates, each weighing over 400 tons, slam shut behind it with a hiss of hydraulic pressure. Pumps roar to life. The chamber begins to rise, not sideways, not diagonally, straight up, nearly 200 meters. That's higher than the Statue of Liberty, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and the Seattle Space Needle. And it doesn't take hours, it takes just 30 minutes. This machine compresses what used to be 4 days of dangerous river travel into a smooth 2.5-hour glide. It's not just fast, it's silent, surreal, and strangely beautiful. From inside the chamber, the landscape shrinks below like a collapsing valley. River becomes ribbon, mountains become shadows. To the outside world, it looks like a ship has taken flight. And when the chamber reaches the upper reservoir, the forward gates swing open, revealing a massive mountain lake, calm, glassy, and 200 meters higher than where the journey began. The ship simply sails forward, as if it hadn't just climbed a mountain. But lifting something this massive isn't just about brute force, it's about precision. The kind of precision that, if it fails for even a second, could turn this engineering marvel into a catastrophic disaster. Next up, how do you lift a skyscraper-sized bathtub filled with steel and water without it collapsing under its own weight? Lifting a 10,000-ton steel chamber straight into the sky isn't just bold, it's borderline insane. So how do you pull it off without ripping the machine apart? The answer: a symphony of steel, counterweights and split-second calculations. At the heart of the Goupitan Ship Lift are 4 colossal concrete towers, each taller than a 50-story building. Anchored into bedrock, these towers don't just guide the chamber, they carry the full load, and they do it with terrifying precision. Attached to the chamber are 256 steel cables, each strong enough to tow a jumbo jet. Together, these cables balance the entire structure like a perfectly tuned scale. How? Through a counterweight system. The same principle behind an elevator, but on a scale never seen before. Each cable is made of 127 strands of high tensile steel, twisted together to maximize strength while keeping weight manageable. If laid end to end, the total length would stretch over 80 kilometers. As the chamber rises, massive gear racks engage with interlocking steel teeth designed to handle enormous pressure while maintaining millimeter level accuracy. These aren't ordinary materials. The gear teeth are forged from a custom alloy, hard enough to resist wear, but flexible enough to absorb vibrations from wind, waves, or even earthquakes. But balance isn't enough. The lift has to stay level, always. If it tilts even slightly, it could buckle or seize up mid-ascent. To prevent that, the system is loaded with sensors that monitor tilt, pressure and tension in real time. If anything shifts, even by a single millimeter, the system recalibrates instantly, no second chances, and in case of power failure, backup generators kick in automatically, providing enough electricity to safely lower the chamber, even during a full blackout. Speaking of power, this machine consumes as much energy as a small city, most of it pulled directly from the nearby hydroelectric turbines. It's a closed system, self-reliant and terrifyingly efficient. The entire lift is controlled by 5 independent computers, each constantly checking the other's calculations. If even one disagrees, the entire system freezes. Safety first, always. Because when you're lifting a chamber heavier than the Eiffel Tower, there's no margin for error. Before Goupitan, Guizhou was an afterthought. It was one of China's poorest provinces, rich in natural resources but paralysed by its geography. Per capita GDP lagged far behind coastal regions. Foreign companies looked elsewhere. Locals relied on subsistence farming or fled to bigger cities for work, and then the mountain moved. Since the Goupitan Ship Lift opened, shipping costs from Guizhou dropped by 67%. That's not a rounding error, that's a total reset. Suddenly, manufacturers didn't have to truck goods over crumbling mountain roads. They could float them straight to the Yangtze, and from there to Shanghai, the coast, and beyond. Factories that were once too expensive to run are now thriving. Industrial output is up 42%, and foreign investment has surged by 83%. What used to be a logistical dead zone is now an economic artery. But it's not just about numbers. Villages once buried in obscurity now serve as logistics hubs. Jobs aren't just in transport. They've exploded in maintenance, parts manufacturing, and regional services. Technology parks are popping up in areas that just 5 years ago didn't even have paved roads. And then there's tourism. So people from across China, and increasingly the world, come to see the skyship that defies gravity. Local hotels, restaurants, and tour operators have sprung up overnight. Entire communities now survive not on farming, but on fascination. This isn't a lift anymore, it's a lifeline. But the most important transformation isn't visible on the surface, because Goupitan wasn't just built to make Guizhou wealthier, it was built to make China safer. On the surface, the Goupitan Ship Lift looks like a marvel of engineering, but underneath, it's a weapon of economic survival. China knows something that many still underestimate. The global supply chain isn't a guarantee, it's a gamble. What happens if the South China Sea becomes a war zone? What if sanctions tighten, ports close, or maritime routes are blocked overnight? Can the world's second largest economy keep moving without the ocean? That's where Goupitan comes in. It's part of something far bigger, a master strategy called dual circulation. The idea, build an internal system so strong, so self-sufficient, that even if the world cuts China off, the country can still function. This ship lift isn't a one-off, it's a node in a hidden superhighway. A massive inland network that includes the Three Gorges Dam, the south to north water transfer project, and thousands of kilometers of engineered rivers and canals. Together they create a backup system for China's economy, an internal bloodstream that moves cargo, power and water, entirely independent of foreign control. In other words, if China can't go around the world, it'll go through itself. This is about resilience, about outlasting pressure, about being able to take a punch, and keep trading, producing and growing while others scramble to catch up. And while most of the world focuses on China's dazzling cities and high-speed trains, it's these quiet, buried megastructures in mountains, rivers and valleys that could decide who survives a global shock. Goupitan isn't just a marvel, it's insurance. If Goupitan looks like science fiction today, just wait. Because in China's playbook, it's not the end, it's the beginning. Behind the scenes, engineers are already working on the next generation of ship lifts. Taller, faster, even more automated. Designs are being drafted that could elevate ships over 250 meters using next-gen materials and AI-powered balancing systems. And this time, they're not just for China. The technology behind Goupitan is becoming an export. Chinese engineers who built the project are now consulting across Southeast Asia, Central Asia and Africa, helping partner nations construct their own vertical waterways. These aren't just infrastructure projects, they're geopolitical anchors tied directly into China's massive Belt and Road Initiative. In other words, Goupitan isn't just lifting ships, it's lifting influence. And while most countries struggle to maintain their aging infrastructure, China's building the future underneath everyone's radar. One vertical canal, one inland port, one floating highway at a time. What happens when these mega projects link together? What happens when China no longer needs to rely on vulnerable ocean shipping, because entire provinces are now directly connected to global markets from the inside out. Goupitan is proof that China isn't just playing catch up, they're playing long term, thinking in decades, not quarters. And as the world watches their skyscrapers rise and bullet trains blur across the map, it might be these quiet, unglamorous, gravity defying lifts hidden in the mountains that change everything.